initially I was like green one for sure. Then I took a look at this red and I was like, ugh. Literally, it is some of the best rice I've tried. Okay. Hi everyone. So I'm really excited today. Today we are going to be, I'm going to be doing a review on this Tatung electric steamer slash rice cooker slash multi-cooker. In Asia, it's really iconic. I know like maybe in the West, it's not as well known, but just to prove my case, when I went to Taiwan, but actually they were selling this on like Japanese sites too. Just how iconic it is like, you know those, I'm gonna come closer. Okay, hold on. You know when they sell the, what is it, like the little like machine, the capsule toys, right? They sell this one. Look, there's the rice paddle, there's the little like rice cup. That's crazy, right? This is how iconic, I mean, I'm not selling this toy, but they do sell these on eBay for quite a chunk of change as well. So that is how iconic these guys are. Like if you go onto Reddit and you're like looking for recipes or like you're looking for reviews of these like Tatung electric steamers, you'll find people will routinely say, oh, I still have mine from 25 years ago, from 30 years ago. They were my parents, they passed it down to me. And I think part of it is just because it does have this like one button mechanism. An article from the Taiwan Gazette talking about the history of these cookers back in say 50s or 60s. Everybody was cooking by briquette. Suddenly electricity came into play and yada yada. But these are supposed to be low wattage electrical kitchen appliances so that it would work in those kitchens. And so even today makes them really good for like energy saving and whatnot. And I'm so excited because you all know that I went to Taiwan at the beginning of the year, and there was pretty much one piece of equipment that I wanted to bring back home that I couldn't because they didn't carry this particular model here. And so anyways, from that time on, I have been working to get someone to have these available so that I can review them for you. So that's why I'm so excited to be pairing up with Yunhai, which is a small business based in Brooklyn, but obviously, you know, works out of the States and then works out of Taiwan as well. And who also happen to be the sole US distributors for Tatung and these electric steamers. If you go to their shop, I mean, I've never been to their shop before, so people who are based in New York, lucky you, please go by. Looking at their site, I know it is going to be the most cute and interesting shop because they work with people like directly from farmers, with artisans, with craft people, with, you know, like small businesses in Taiwan, and they kind of bring these goods over to showcase it to really the international public. So today this is what I'm going to do. I have listed everything down. We're going to break everything down so that it is not overwhelming for anyone. Section 1, I'm going to talk about what are these electric steam cookers and what does it do? Because it is not your typical kind of like multi-cooker, your typical electric steam cooker. This is like, it works like a double boiler mechanism, okay? So it's very different. Section 2, I'm gonna tell you about how to use it, okay? Because it's really simple in that there is only one button. So in many ways, it is a simple device, and yet it can do a lot of things. So we'll go into that. Number 3 is how did I find using it? So I tried a lot of the recipes that Yunhai sent me in their cookbook, which is included in these things depending on what package. Yeah, the photography is really gorgeous. It is that kind of old, rustic aesthetic that we all love. So that's section 3. Section 4, I'm going to talk about who is this for? You know, do I need it? Do we need anything? But just kind of specifically to address some of the questions that I think people might have when they see, you know, something like a simpler style electric cooker, and whether, you know, how similar is it to a rice cooker? Is it limiting in any way because it is so simple? That kind of a thing. And then section 5, maybe I should just say it now. Yunhai has given us a special discount code specifically for the channel. These guys are not normally on sale. I mean, they are probably a really big ticket item. They sell out of these all the time, and we had to wait for like certain models to come back in before we did this. So they have given us a code for 10% off. I'm gonna link that down in the description, and a pretty good time frame in terms of when you can use it, because I wanted everybody to be able to have access to this during the holidays. Watch the video first, but you're going to find that for people who really like cooking, like the connoisseurs of cooking that like really like this like retro vibe, like these kind of vintage green colors or like the vintage red color, like if you know, you know. And if you have anyone in your family or like friends circle that like kind of like these cooking gadgets, this is really good. Like, they are going to cry if you get this for them. So we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, thank you, Yunhai, for giving us that code. So I mentioned that it was an electric steamer. How it cooks in comparison to like a rice cooker or a pressure cooker is the rice cooker and the pressure cookers, they have direct heat. So when that outside bit is heated, it is like a stronger heat. Whereas this, the heat goes through a layer of water. The heat is in the form of steam. So for certain things like grains, like rice, it likes that kind of heat a lot better. For things like braises that need to be a gentler form of cooking, that needs to be moist, this is kind of like the preferred way of cooking it. This thing has a pot within a pot, and you put water into this in-between space first, and you cook everything in this other pot or in a steamer on top. So in many ways, it is a double boiler electric cooker. I know what you all are thinking. You're thinking double boilers, okay, that's gonna take forever to cook. It actually does it quite quickly. I think not only does it cook from under and all around because you have the water that's surrounding this pot, but as it creates steam, it also envelops and it goes into the rice from the top and then the bottom and all around. So I have not had such good rice, and I mean that like texturally, just like the perfect amount of chew. It has the bite, everything's still like intact. It's soft enough so it's not like it's raw. And I never thought that I would be one of those people that's like, oh well, like, you know, like I'm a rice connoisseur. I just think like, especially with rice, with grains, it is one of those ingredients that prefers it to be gentle. Like gentle. Let me absorb the liquid. Let me, you know, like give me some time. Let me absorb the liquid. Don't burn me. Like I don't need high heat. I just need time and like kind of gentle heat so that I can just take everything in. So what is it really is that it is an electric steamer done in the technique of a double boiler. You can cook whatever you want in here, be it like grains, rice, you can do soups, you can do congis, you can do stews, okay, within this pot. But also what is really neat about it is this cooker is also very synonymous with like, people will buy these attachments, these steamer tray attachments, and they will like stack them up. I've seen like 3 or 4 high, so that while you're cooking your grains or your soups or your stews, you're also steaming, like you can steam vegetables, you can steam leftovers, you can steam like another dish. Like one of the things that I'll mention later is just, I find that this cooker, when I was cooking with it, you know, not having a big family with me here in London, I don't tend to cook like multi-dishes that often. I always do like one pot or whatnot, and it's just easier that way. But when you can just stack your steam trays and you just make like small dishes of like vegetables, small dishes of like, you know, like tofu with some soy sauce, and you just stack them, you can have a table where you're having like multi sides or like multi dishes, and sometimes it just feels more festive that way, you know, versus like a one pot thing. And it's quite nice, and it makes it like really easy and also like really fun to do as well. Okay, so in section 2, I'm going to talk about how do you use it, and then also some of the technical specifications. I'll tell you what is included in each of the cookers. Let me just show you a quick clip of how do you use it first.
My heartbeat goes like cosine. 내가 맘에 들면 follow, 좋아요, 구독. 이 노래가 유명해져야 너가 날 만나줄 거잖아. 그때 나를 바라볼 때 심장이 멎은 듯해. 무궁화 꽃이 폈게 움직일 수 없어, baby. My flowers waiting your light, and I'm blooming by your side. You know I've been waiting for too long. Sunshine on the shoreline feels like a super trooper. Is this the Truman Show right now? 너까지 좋아하는 음악을 들려줘. 이 노래 말고 어디서 본 듯한 익숙한 눈빛과 내 맘은 떨려와. 난 멈출 수 없어. 비추는 나를 만나.
Okay, so essentially how you use this is there is an instruction manual for your grains and for your rice, so the very basic things. It will tell you, depending on how much rice you make, of how much water you put on the outer pot and then how much water you put on the inner pot depending on the rice. This steamer is very much temperature controlled because once the water boils away from the outer pot, once there's no more water left, this thing will pop up. So it is a very simple device. I want to say, or somebody was saying that it is a very intuitive electrical appliance. I don't want to use intuitive because I think it scares people. Like people think like, oh, okay, like you have to naturally know how to cook to make this work. And I think what they mean by intuitive is just like kind of common sense type cooker. If there's no more water left and you see that, like you taste something and you're like, oh yeah, like that still needs like a little bit more time. I want it to be softer. I want it to be, you know, whatever. Just add another half a cup of water. You're just steaming it for a longer amount of time, which isn't an option that you get when you're working, you know, over the stove, because generally if you leave something alone and then all of the steam goes out, you're gonna have a burned bottom, you're gonna have a burned pot. And then of course, if you wanted to use this just, you know, as a steamer, they have a steamer attachment in here, but you can feel free to, like, if you had like the bamboo steamers, to like add it on top of this unit. But generally, when I put a cup of water out here and then I make a cup of rice, it generally takes about 20 minutes. So they recommend you wait until this thing pops and then you wait about 10 minutes just to, you know, like finish letting the rice absorb. It only takes about 6 minutes to start boiling, which that's why, like, if I was making a point about, like, you know, like if you were thinking about how does this compare with like a rice cooker or a pressure cooker, I kind of do think that rice cookers and pressure cookers take also a certain amount of time to get up to heat. So by 6 minutes, I have timed it. I can already hear that it is rumbling and that is boiling on the inside. And then again, it takes about 20 minutes to cook with 1 cup of water. And then with each additional half a cup of water that I add to this outer unit, I find that it increases the cooking time by about 10 to 15 minutes. So if you knew for sure that you wanted to steam something for 20 minutes, it'd be like a cup of water. Or if you were pretty certain that you wanted something steamed for, you know, like 35 to 40 minutes, you know, like a cup and a half to 2 cups of water. Like steaming is such it's a really healthy way of cooking, first off, because you don't use oil or anything, but it is an interesting way of cooking because it is so gentle that if you were to, you know, like over steam it by like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, you know, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. And that's kind of what I found is like for grains anyways, if it's like a little bit longer, a little bit less, it's not a big deal. Like for vegetables, I definitely think so. Like for if you're stacking this up and you're steaming vegetables, then you need to kind of watch your time. But like for everything else, it's a little bit imprecise just because steaming is such a gentle way of cooking that I just don't think necessarily it makes that much of a difference. The resting temperature should be around 40 to 50 degrees Celsius or 104 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. So let me just put up the specifications for these two cookers now so that you all can see them. Okay, so let's quickly talk about what's included in the packages. So you can purchase different packages that will include things like tongs or things like the cookbook, but if you just wanted to buy the basic rice electric steamer, obviously you have the mechanism itself, and then on the inside it is going to include your inside cooker. So this is for when you're making your rices, your grains, your soups, your stews or whatnot. What they also include is a lid to the inner pot, and this is particularly useful for if you made something and you have leftovers and you just want to stick it into the fridge. It is perfect for that. It is actually not used during the cooking process because when you put the lid on, obviously the steam is not able to kind of go in. So instructions specifically say that you do not include the lid on while it's cooking. It has this cup measure, which this happens very often when I buy goods from Asia as well. This cup is a little bit smaller than your typical, I guess, like US standard cup. I think it was like, I'll give you the exact measurements, but it's like 3/4 of a cup, maybe like 80% of a cup. So this is kind of the cup measurement. They include a rice paddle as well. And then finally, they have this steamer attachment for if you weren't cooking your, you know, rice stews or whatnot. You stick this in here, you know, grab a dish of whatever. It could be leftovers, it could be vegetables, it could be, you know, whatever. Put that on, and then in that way, this works as a steamer. And if you wanted to, again, getting those extra steamers or whatever steamer attachment that you already have, you know, at home that's heat safe, and just stack it, because you can actually cook a lot of food with this. Also with like very little water. That was something that I was quite surprised with, is sometimes they'll recommend like just like a half a cup of water or like 1 cup of water, and it actually cooks everything fine, but it's actually seemingly it's like a very little amount of water that you put in. So that's interesting. Well, and I wanted to also show what Yunhai sent me was this additional kind of upper pot. So when you're making rice, you can actually just, or rice or grains or soup or whatnot, this actually fits right on top of that inner pot. 2 other things that they sent me. I kind of wanted you to see the packaging as well, because I knew that Yunhai specifically, like specially designed each of the boxes and all of the extra things. Okay, so section 3, how did I find using it? What were some of the strengths? What were some of the shortcomings, etc., etc.? So let me just tell you what I cooked in here first. I did I steamed cakes. I did grains. Not only did I do rice, but I did like, I did millet, I did buckwheat, I did brown rice. I made sure to test it because I know that most people use it for like a short grain white rice, but you know, I wanted to try different grains too. So cakes, grains. I made yogurt in this. I made vegetables in this. I steamed buns in this. Oh, I also proved bread in this as well because I was like looking on just like different threads of like what people could do with this. People use this also for sanitizing, which is really interesting too, and I can talk a bit about that like afterwards, but let's kind of go through the strengths first. Like I mentioned before, it is some of the best rice that I have tasted in a long time. I just think that this mechanism cooks rice and cooks grains, cooks starches in a way that starches like. It is able to gently cook something, but still at a pretty good speed. It's not like a slow cook. Other grains were really good too. Like I had put like a mix of like millet and buckwheat and I don't know, maybe like some brown rice and maybe even purple rice as well. And I thought that they would come out like horribly because they're different. I did soak them all ahead of time because specifically for rice, you know how important it is to soak it either overnight or at least for a good couple of hours to get rid of the natural arsenic that's inside. Absolutely do that. I know that a lot of people don't, but it's better for you that way. So I soak all of my grains ahead of time also because it hydrates them so that they're all at the same state. They are all hydrated, they're all ready to be cooked. And so that helps them cook better, faster, more evenly. And so that's kind of what I did with my grains, and they turned out, you know, surprisingly well. Other than for the rice are braises. Especially braises where you want some of that condensation to add to the sauce. And so you'll have like, I saw like a Korean recipe where they took, you know, cabbage protein, and they layered it, and they had like some soy sauce and whatnot. And then they put this in this electric steamer, and then after it was done cooking, it was just like soft and lovely, but then some of the condensation had like added to the sauce, so it was just really moist and nice. So braises, if you have things that require gentle cooking and moist cooking, like with liquid, gentle cooking. It's also one of those things where if you have leftovers and you've had leftovers for like 2 days in a row, and let's say you're just cooking like a new pot of rice, you know, put the 2 leftovers on top, and that way you easily get like a multi-dished dinner or a multi-dished lunch. It's very convenient, and like the foods that you eat feel cleaner. I was not originally, when I read that this thing like sanitizes dishes and people, you know, like put their dishes in there to give it like a good clean, I was like, you know, like I don't really care that much about that. I'll wash my dishes, but once is enough. But what I really love it for is like, I'm like a granny where I collect jars. I just collect old jars, specifically ones that look like really pretty. I just collect them because sometimes I'll put my miso in it. Sometimes like when I buy in bulk and I want to put like my beans or my seeds or something, and I don't want it in the plastic packaging, I'll put it in these glass jars. But a lot of the times, sometimes like you're getting a brush in there and you like scrub it down, but you know, like maybe you're not using hot enough water to sanitize everything. So for things like that, where there previously had been like sauces or like, I don't know, things fermenting or whatever, it was actually really nice to just put jars in here and just like to sanitize the whole thing that way. You just add like a cup of water, put the jars in, and then once this thing pops up again, the jars are sanitized. With the foods that I made, some of which are from the Yunhai cookbook, I'm going to launch after this video as well so that you can see what I made and then how they turned out. But yeah, I would say like the cakes were super moist, the grains were really good. The yogurt, even though I thought that this thing actually got a little bit hotter than what they told me, about 122 Fahrenheit, I thought it got hotter, but it actually still worked in terms of fermenting yogurt. I'm gonna move on to kind of maybe some of the shortcomings of this. So, the grains, when you cook them, because it is a method where you cook it until there's no more water left. Many times the grains, like on the bottom layer, have a tendency to stick to the bottom of this. So I guess, I mean, it is stainless steel, so it's not like a non-stick. Rice sticks to it a bit, but it's actually, you know, if you just do it early, it's actually not too bad. It's not like there's like a big crust that sticks to the bottom. Washing the inside. So I watched a couple of videos on this. London has really hard water, which I feel like when I was in Taiwan definitely was not the case. But because you have to put water in this bowl and, you know, and use it to steam, a lot of the times if you live in a place with more hard water, you're going to get more of, you know, like the calcium and the lime deposits on the bottom. What some of the people actually recommend is to just put some citric acid or using either lemon juice or vinegar, and then putting some of that in and putting this through like a cycle, okay, and then having that all steam out, and then afterwards taking like a cloth and then just wiping it through. And so I don't do that with each one just because I'm lazy, but maybe you should. And also, like, depending on what you're steaming, a lot of the times, sometimes like the juices from that might fall in there a bit as well. So in instances like that where it's like juices or like more flavored ingredients, I would definitely say to definitely wipe it down immediately, or put a little bit of water in here. You can put it through a cycle and just like let it soak a little bit. Not that it cannot steam veggies, but because sometimes like you want to just put everything on and then cook your grains, that's going to be way too much time for vegetables, right? So vegetables are kind of the only thing where if you know that you're going to be steaming something like, you know, more delicate, you have to be mindful of the time. Otherwise, if you put everything together, it's just going to be super mushy vegetables, which actually for cabbage is magical. Like, sometimes I'm not a big fan of cabbage, but when cabbage is cooked to oblivion, it is delicious. Like a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of like sugar or sweetener, garlic, it's so, so good. And then I guess the last thing is that, so I'm in the UK. Yunhai does ship internationally. They have a couple of countries that they ship to. If you are in the US and you have the plug for it, that's great. If you are in the UK or countries that don't have a US plug, you do have to get one of those converters. And so mine is a 2000 watt because I wanted to be able to put both of these in at once, but you can probably just get a 1000 watt one. The reason I got a higher wattage for mine is because they said when something initially starts to receive the electricity, it needs about 1.5 times its voltage. So for the 700, it's going to be at least like 1050, but it might work with 1000. For this one, it should be fine. Hopefully someday, I'm hoping that Tatung, if there is enough of an international audience, can get this guy to be kind of like multi, you know, like an international pot so that you don't need the voltage converters. But it's just something to note because that also takes up some room and some space on your shelves as well. I think a lot of people might ask, okay, like, do I go with the smaller one, the 2.4 liter, or do I go with the larger one, the 4 liter? So if you have a smaller kitchen, of course, like, it makes sense to get the smaller one just for size alone. But actually what I found is that the larger one, although it's larger, is not that much larger. And if you are planning to do multiple things with it, like not just make your grains, not just steaming, like small things, because I did cake in this as well. And if your cake pans are like always circular, then sometimes, yeah, like it will fit, like a 6-inch cake pan will fit into the smaller version, but I had one that was a square based one and I couldn't get it in. And it was just so much easier to have something that was slightly larger, especially if you're making cakes, if you're making like cupcakes and you're planning to make, you know, like 6 or 12 cupcakes. Like, I definitely think I definitely think that the larger one is worth it as well. I think maybe I think a lot of people tend to steer away from, like me originally, steer away from the bigger one because you think like, oh, counter space, or like, oh, I'm not going to eat that much rice. But especially if you do plan on making, especially if you do plan on making other things with it, having this extra space is really nice. Things like sanitizing your jars and whatnot. It is nice to have something where it is a little bit bigger. Okay, so my last section, section 4, is just talking about, well, who is this cooker for? Is it limiting versus like a rice cooker or versus like a pressure cooker? Am I giving up something because the mechanism seems so simple? My first reason that I had wanted to get it was just looks alone. Like this, you put it into your kitchen and it just like, again, it just magically transforms it. Honestly, for anybody looking for an appliance that's very simple to use, like you definitely don't need to read too much instruction on this. One switch, once the water evaporates, the switch pops up. If you need to steam it more, add more water, flip the switch down, you know, so it is very easy and intuitive that way. Like somebody that doesn't want a lot of faff, I want to be able to make like good rice or like steam multiple dishes at once and have it just be really simple. Like I don't need a lot of buttons. I don't need to like be taking this guy apart and learning how to clean this and getting different, you know, parts and doing that. If you are a person that like is more geared towards like steaming your foods, or like you like braises, you like foods that are more like moist and requires kind of like a more gentle cooking temperature, this is going to do the job a lot better than like a rice cooker or than a pressure cooker would, like by far. Is buying this limiting in any way? Because it is so easy to use. There's only one switch, right? Like sometimes if you're spending money, you want to make sure that there's like 20 buttons that you can, you know, that you can hit, and there's so many options. I have one of those electric pressure cookers. The only difference I would say is that there is no bean option and no saute option. So beans obviously require super high heat because it is a really tough material. It needs super high heat, a lot of pressure, and then obviously there's no necessarily like a saute option. I would say like compared to a pressure cooker or a rice cooker, like short of those two things, a pressure cooker anyways, pressure cooker, it takes time to get up to that temperature. It takes time to kind of release the pressure. The time on this that it takes to cook is actually quite short. The steaming mechanism from all sides really quickens up the cooking, even though it is a gentler form of cooking. It is a moist, gentler form of cooking. I mean, its strengths are its strengths, and what it can't do is what it can't do. So we're not like saying that, you know, it can do it all, but what it can do really well. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this review. That was kind of long yet again. Remember that Yunhai has graciously provided all of you viewers with a coupon code, and I will put that in the description box, and then links to their site as well. So thank you so much, Yunhai, for doing that, because they don't usually have sales on especially this electric cooker, because it is very in demand, and you know, they have to ship it over from Taiwan. So thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, stay tuned for future recipes where I will be using this to cook various things. And if you have any questions, comments for me, if you have one of these in your family, let people know how it works and you know, the foods that you have been cooking in it as well. And yeah, I've been talking too much, a little bit dry. I will see you all again next time, okay? All right.